You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Okey. In the next two editions, we'll be talking to a private equity investor. I call it Reflections of a Private Equity Investor. But we'll be doing more than that. We'll be talking about the exciting, unconventional journey of my guests through medicine, through chartered accountancy, and then finance and investing. His view about this peculiar thing called private equity and how it's suited to the Nigerian economy. And then we'll be talking about values and society and the role of faith in building development. It's a very exciting two editions. Enjoy the program.
My name is Enalamah. I live in Lagos, where things are getting better every day.
Our school has just been renovated.
And they give us free notebooks too. Going to school is easier and safer for students like me because I can cross the highway using the footbridge. And I use the BRT bus, which is fast, convenient, and free for students like me. I enjoy looking at the beautiful streets on my way to school. And the many street signs tell me where exactly I am. When I get to Basic 12, the government will pay the fees for my GCE and NECO examinations. I am happy. My mom and dad says all these good things are happening because they pay their taxes. I hope to pay my taxes when I grow up and start working. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council. My guest today is has a very interesting profile. He's a medical doctor. He became a chartered accountant, and then he ended up in private equity investing. He went to the Harvard Business School and holds an MBA from that school. He worked in investment banking, but he also calls himself or he's associated with something called apostles in the marketplace. So he has a very broad range of experiences and insights that we're going to share over the next edition of the Policy Council. My guest is Okey Enalamah. You're welcome to the Policy Council.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Okey, I think I've heard you talk about how you left medicine, which would have taken you so many years, and ended up in accounting and became a chartered. How did that transition take place?
Well, you may have heard me talk about it because it happened a long time ago. That transition actually happened in 1988, which is more like 26 years ago. But if I go back, I ended up studying medicine because we were part of the early sort of, I don't want to call it JAMB experiment because it has survived. JAMB is still on till today, but I certainly was one of the early people to do JAMB in 1979. And I got into sort of pharmacy and then medical school, which I did for 6 years. And then I did the 2 years of sort of house job and youth service. And I somehow felt drawn to business. I have not been able to tell myself fully why, but there was certainly an appetite for business and an interest in business that went beyond the norm. And I had the opportunity when Arthur Andersen was recruiting non-accountants to train them as business professionals to join the firm. I can go into the details of that if needed. But let me say something about that because you asked a very good question. And it turned out to be one of the wisest decisions I've made because at the time, 8 years of investment in medicine looked like a lifetime. It looked like eternity. But when I look back now in the context of 26 years later, it looks like it was a wise thing to have done to say, well, if you wanted to pursue a career in business, why don't you go ahead and make that investment? And it relates to all of life, as you know. There are times when you have to forget the things that are behind and focus on the things that are ahead so they don't live a life of regret. And I'm glad I made that choice because I've actually found my rhythm in business
and so you went on to take all those accounting exams and qualified as a professional accountant.
Yes, and a lot of the credit for that has to go to Arthur Andersen because Arthur Andersen, like I said, recruited non-accountants to train them as business professionals and professional accountants. What did they do? So they actually recruited you and paid you. So what Andersen paid me at the time was not materially lower than what I was earning as a doctor.
Okay.
So that made the decision a bit easier. I remember speaking to my parents at the time and saying, I've joined this firm that would train me not just in Nigeria but abroad. They used to train people all over the world. That also made it easier. And then the quality of the people that the firm attracted made it easier to feel that you were part of a privileged group, or a group of people that were privileged to end up in Anderson. And of course, during that process, you got trained, and qualifying as an accountant was actually part of the training. So you were working, and then you were doing these sort of chartered accountants exams.
And I do recall, even though it took me some time later to remember that it was you after I'd met you, but I do recall you auditing us in GTB at some point.
Well, we audited GTB, and I certainly may have done, and I was in financial services. So I may have done part of that, but the one I remember clearly is FCMB. I audited FCMB.
Okay, okay. Interesting. Okay, so this is, and then you went to Harvard Business School. How did that happen? So
Harvard Business School, thank God for friendships. I had a friend who had studied economics and was going to do his MBA in the US. He was the first person to actually mention Harvard Business School to me. He said that's a school he really would have wanted to get into. He ended up going to another business school, but not without sowing that seed in me. So when I got to Anderson, and I discovered or found out that Anderson were actually auditors to the Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria on a pro bono basis. I offered to do the audit just to learn more about the school. And I had a lucky break. The gentleman who was the treasurer that year, a gentleman called Gilbert Ozodike, Ajolo Ozodike, runs Kutix and AdSwitch and all these things. Actually turned out to be a mentor of sorts, because he told me about the school and about his experience. Because he was one of the people who had gone from Nigeria to do an MBA at Harvard Business School before me, and therefore had the experience that was relevant to me. And on the basis of that, I went back to see Dick Kramer, who my mentor, and of course, chairman of African Capital Alliance now. And Dick ultimately then helped me to sort of prepare my application, and that's how I got to Harvard Business School.
And how was it?
You mean the experience in the school?
Yes, in Harvard.
It was a very good experience.
How would you compare schooling at Harvard with, where did you do your first degree?
University of Nigeria in
Nsukka.
I think they serve different purposes. I've been in terms of education, that's why I'm very interested in education and education coming back. Every school I've attended, has played its part. I went to Government College Omaha. I'm very involved in a group trying to restore the school to its former sort of standards, because it was a very foundational experience. Yeah. Yes. Then I went to University of Nigeria, and it was a growing experience. I was there between 15 and 21. I mean, that's how young I was, and yet, somehow some of the friendships I met there are lifelong relationships. The training I got as a doctor, I would still say was very good training.
There's someone who told me, somebody with a similar profile to yours, who veered off medicine to something, and he said, be very careful of doctors. They're very clinical. And therefore, in any context, even if it's in politics, and this fellow was talking about politics, they tend to have a very clinical view of things. Would you say, how would you respond
I would
to
describe it in a different way, but I certainly can relate to that. I would say there is a discipline to medicine. Medicine is not just a calling, but there's a discipline to it. And because you're dealing with human lives and the safety of people, you're expected to conform. It's not a place for sort of people, being loose cannons and doing whatever they like. And that training, that discipline, I think is very useful for whatever else one decides to do. So I do agree there are some cross-functional training and experience and skills that will travel for somebody who's done that. So if I go back to comparing the experience then, so with that background, I think Harvard Business School, what it did bring to me was a global perspective. To know there is a whole world outside Nigeria. And also the business training, to give you what I might call the academic aspects of it. It's one thing to be a chartered accountant. It's another thing to do your MBA at a place like Harvard Business School. What they do is to train you to be a general manager. As you know, they've promoted the general manager's perspective of business training. And I think they do a good job of it.
Excellent job. Okay, I'm having this fascinating discussion with Okey Enalamah. And we're looking at how he moved from being a doctor to being a chartered accountant and then a private equity investor. We'll be right back.
My name is Femi Durojayi. Welcome to the New Lagos, where things are improving every day. I work on the island and live on the mainland. But that's no longer a problem. With improved roads, I get to work faster. Sometimes I even leave my car and use the BRT bus, which is comfortable, fast, efficient, and reliable. After a hard day's work, the nights and evenings are even more fun. The streets are better lit, and the city is more secure. so I can catch my phone in peace. I pay my taxes because I want to continue enjoying the good things a big modern city like our Lagos brings. So it's my taxes that makes them real. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and I'm talking to Okey Enalamah. He's the CEO of African Capital Alliance, Nigeria's pioneer, as it were, private equity company. It's a fair statement. You pioneered, ACA pioneered private equity investing in Nigeria.
I think that's
by and large.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you get into private equity?
So you asked me about Harvard Business School and what it did for me. That's one of the things it did. So when I went to Harvard Business School, I remember I said I wanted to pursue a career in business. I would say I went even further to say I wanted to pursue a career in finance. And a lot of that came from the exposure and the training I got from the business school. During the summer internship program, the summer program that I had to do between my 2 years at HBS, I went to Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs, as you know, is a very leading investment bank. And they give you a good sort of overview of investment banking, including principal investing and even private equity. And coming back from that program, I became more and more persuaded I wanted to be in private equity. I also became more and more persuaded I wanted to work in Africa. But as happens in life, you know, one can get very lucky because, I mean, the options I had were things like maybe going back to Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or the usual, what I call the typical offers you get coming out of a top business school like HBS. But because I wanted to do Africa and I wanted to do private equity, it was a little more difficult to get what I wanted. And while I was still weighing my options, I got a call from another alum of Harvard Business School, Mr. Tom Barry, who is also a founder of ACA. But
I met Tom Barry.
Exactly. So Tom Barry used to be the CEO of Rockefeller & Co., the investment arm of the Rockefeller family. He had invested in many countries around the world and decided in 1993, end of 93, to do his own, start his own firm and invest in South Africa. This was when Mandela was becoming the president of South Africa. And I had the good fortune of being the first African he sort of recruited and ultimately partnered with to do it. So he recruited me out of Harvard Business School, and we joined hands together, and we raised the first private equity fund for post-apartheid South Africa. First working in the US, and then ultimately I moved to South Africa and spent about 3 years there. And so that's how I got into the world of private equity, and that's where I received my training from that eventually enabled me to come back to Nigeria.
And then you partnered with your old mentor, Dick Kramer, and others to set up African Capital Alliance. It was totally greenfield. It was totally unexplored, uncharted territory. How was creating African Capital Alliance?
Again, very interesting. So Dick, who, like you rightly pointed out, had been a mentor and boss before then, came to visit me in South Africa in 1996, I think it was, when I was working with this firm that Tom Barry and I had set up with South African partners. The firm is now called Brit. Then it was called Capital Zephyr, because Zephyr is the name of Tom's firm in the US. So at the time he came to visit, and you know, Dick had been in Nigeria since 1978, founded Arthur Andersen here and a number of other initiatives. Having retired from Andersen at the time, he decided to stay on for what he called unfinished business, which was basically trying to help the country chart its economic course and continue its path to development. And when he came and we showed him what we were doing, Dick's remark to me was like, but this would work in Nigeria. And I have to say at the time I was somewhat skeptical. And the reason I was skeptical is that we still had a military government. And if you understand how private equity works, you actually need 2 or 3 elements to come together for it to work. One element is the funding, which is the capital you are putting to work, the capital part of that private capital. And that usually comes from international sophisticated investors. And they typically invest in markets that are open, markets that are ready. Now, the second thing you need are, of course, businesses that are ready to receive capital. And, of course, the third thing you need are people who have the sort of understanding, the skill set to manage. And so I thought that the first part, in terms of the capital, feeling the market was ready, in the case of Nigeria, would be a tall ask, would be a difficult thing to ask.
And that was Abacha who was running.
Yeah, it was General Abacha at the time. But, again, private equity is a very long-term thing. And I would say, ultimately, with the benefit of hindsight, Dick was right. Because what then happened was, like, as I came home, I actually came home to get married later in 1996. And Dick, being a mentor and boss and friend, we caught up, right? And we started talking. And we agreed that it made sense to begin a process of establishing a private equity firm here anyway. And Dick, in the interim, had been developing his thoughts and working with Chief Ernest Shonekon, Pascal Dozier, Mohamed Hayatuddin, and the four of them and myself and Tom Barry ultimately then started African Capital Alliance. Yes.
Interesting story. So, okay, let me backtrack a bit. You and I understand what private equity is, but maybe most of my viewers are now wondering, what's this thing they're talking about? So what is private equity?
So private equity is an organized professional way of funding private businesses before they come to the stock market and become quoted. And the general assumptions or underpinnings of that professional funding is the following. Number one, that you need to be more sophisticated to work with private businesses that you don't own yourself or you don't control initially. Number two, that you need a partnership between the founders or original owners and yourselves to build those businesses to a level of maturity and a level of sophistication that will permit the general public to then invest when they come to the public market, which is why the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the Securities and Exchange Commission would demand higher standards in terms of the level of rigor of reporting, the level of transparency, the number of investors and so on for a company to be quoted on the stock exchange. Okay. We deal with companies before they get to that stage. In fact, in some respect, we prepare companies, you know, to come to the public market.
That's usually your way of exit. But
that's one way of exit.
I'll be going ahead of myself. Let's take a short time out and we'll be right back with Okey Enalamah.
My name is Laide Awoyemi. I live for Lagos. You see as our new Lagos just define the good. Good thing good though. To go market now, no hard at all. Just pay. Sit down inside BRT bus. Small time, you don't reach where they go. Hospital nko, the full ground. And for me and my pikin where I just born, treatment now free. You look left, you look right. Them they build new roads, new hospitals, new schools, new things everywhere. Everywhere they shine, gone. We thank God though. But come on, I hear saying that this tax money where they pay, and then they use do all these good things. Me, they pay my own tax. Say they pay your own.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. I'm having this fascinating conversation with Okey Enalamah, CEO of African Capital Alliance, and we're talking about this thing called private equity. So, okay, you've explained to us a little bit of what private equity is, but why do financial markets need this type of vehicle or investment outlet?
Very good question, Okeyemi. I would say first that if you think about capital and all the sources and different sort of stages of capital, and you know, the stages of capital and availability of capital or even funding should match the stages of the life cycle of businesses. So if you think about when a business is starting, usually most businesses get started and the only people you can get money from are family, friends, and fools, right? Because at that stage, it's early days, you know, most businesses will fail anyway. So that's something, and then after that you get angel investing. These are people who are individuals doing things semi-formally or even informally. Then after that you get venture capital. These are people who are prepared to fund early stage business or even startups, but in an institutional way. They get money again from institutional investors, but are professional venture capital investors. Then you get capital for all the businesses that are private or not yet public, but need capital for whatever reason. It could be
that
expansion.
means they have potential.
They have potential.
They've gone through startup.
They've gone through startup. They've survived that stage, and now they're trying to institutionalize. They're trying to grow and become, you know, scale businesses, large businesses. And at that stage, they could need expansion capital. It could be family businesses where the family members want to exit and they don't necessarily want to go to the public market. It could be businesses where multinationals are coming into the country and they want to set up a business and they want to work with private investors to do it. And it could be a variety of other things. all those businesses, it could also be classic business called buyouts, which is where a management team have run a business and they want to buy it from the owners and they need professional capital to partner with them, what we call management buyouts, to do it. All those types of needs, all those needs, capital needs, fall into private equity, broadly defined. And you will find that like it does several things in an economy. Number one, to use an economy like Nigeria, most of the business is actually private. Most of the economy, Nigerian economy, is not on the stock exchange. Therefore, you could argue or you could say that private equity has a bigger role to play than even in other markets. That's one. The second thing is that this principle of partnership, how you work with businesses and partner with management teams to help them reach their full potential. I had Warren Buffett, that you know very well, when I was in business school, came to speak to us at Harvard Business School. And he said people and investments are very similar. That the same way that if you nurture people well, you can realize their full potential. If you nurture businesses well, you can realize their full potential. And private equity is meant to do that. I will also say finally...
So it's not just capital that private equity
No, it's not just capital. Which leads me to my third comment, which is around institutionalization. Helping businesses to become more institutionalized, helping businesses to achieve the right level of corporate governance, to achieve best practices in the way things are done, helping them to attract good people. Because when you attract professional capital, frequently it can increase the confidence that the wider public will have in that business if it's private, such that you might find senior level professionals being willing to work for the company. All those things come together in private equity.
Excellent. I'm having this interesting conversation with teaching Nigerians and ourselves about what private equity is and how Okey and Enalamah got into pioneering private equity.